Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires we call the internets, recording his third show in 7 days, is Joe, Crazy Writer.
Since you protested so... Oh, I just screwed up. Did we use that, my second?
Yeah, we used the second one.
Okay, well, I was going to make a third one, but you were protesting it so bad I decided to just skip it.
Okay.
You're no fun anymore.
I never was fun.
Oh, well, I have a couple affidavits of women whose apartments you've cleaned who said you were fun until you cleaned it, but after that, you were no fun anymore.
Whatever happened to all the fun in the world?
It's probably at C2E2, March 22nd, 24th in Chicago. And if you want, John Barrowman will be there, which I think is cool. Or you could go talk to Alicia Silverstone and say, I guess you're not really acting. Or you could talk to Summer Glau and say, what was it like on Big Bang Theory?
Actually, I have to ask her more about what it was like on the Terminator show.
Clark Gregg would be fun to talk to.
What's it like dying?
He got better.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well.
He died in the comic and came back, too.
John Barrowman, when I ask it, it'd be like, if you actually meet the current doctor, are you going to hit on him or her?
Well, of course.
Well, yeah, he's a hound dog.
That's the thing I like about Captain Jack Sparrow. He hits on everybody and everything.
He does.
And now that we know the TARDIS,
that's how they call him.
Now that we know the TARDIS has a personality, I'm kind of surprised he didn't put the moves on the TARDIS.
I think only the doctor knows that.
Oh, everybody can figure it out.
No. Not every TARDIS is sentient.
We don't know that.
Well, they're grown.
Aren't they the same TARDIS? They just get a different interior?
Screensaver.
Oh, okay.
You changed it. I don't like it.
We have a correction.
What?
Yes, Michael Carter let us know that I made a mistake. And I said that Alex...
So it's not my error.
No.
Oh, that's good.
That I said that Alex Toth designed the characters for Johnny Quest. And I know all he had to do was say Johnny Quest and error, and I knew I was wrong because that was actually done by Doug Wildey, who the last thing he did was one of the... I find this one of the oddest things of the late 80s. He did a graphic novel called Rio, which was a Western, that was published by Comico and then by Marvel. So in Marvel's graphic novel line, they actually printed a Western done by Doug Wildey. Alex Toth created the character designs for Space Ghost, Herculoids, and the Super Friends. So Joe regrets the error.
No, I don't. You made the error.
That doesn't matter. You still are the one who regrets the error, because last week you're the one who started this whole errata thing where we have to correct things.
Don't regret any error. I mean, if I did, I'd be listening to the old podcast, and it would be a podcast in and of itself, because I am a constant font of misinformation, mispronunciations, and just outright wrong.
So you're running for president?
No, I'm not in that category.
Oh, okay. But you sent me an article.
I did.
That has to do with one of the things that I was thinking about, because I've been thinking about how the comic industry is going to change in 2019.
Something has to change. Now, before you continue on to this podcast, we're going to post this article on our Facebook page. It's from IC2V.
ICV2.
See, look at that. I'm wrong already. Guest column by Phil Boyle of Coliseum Comics. And I guess the columnist, first of all, ICV2 is Internal Correspondence Volume 2. It's, I don't know if it's public or retailer only, but it kind of deals with the retail.
Part of it is public, but there's also a pro section where if you're a retailer and you pay a certain amount, you get into the pro section, which has more in-depth sales figures and a message board and things like that.
Yeah, and it talks about things that you may care about. Like there is no second Hasbro Con in 2019, if you ever went to the first one. But so they posted a guest column by Phil Boyle of Coliseum of Comics. It's the largest comics and game retailer in the Southeast. And he shared his thoughts on what he sees as his top 8 problems. So of the comic industry that needs to change, he posts his solutions and what publishers can do. We're not going to cover his solutions and what he thinks publishers can do. We're just going to talk about the problems. Cory's going to talk about what he thinks, and then I will talk about what I think. And we'll see how far we go. He actually listed 8 things. Now, just as a little background, comic retailers, and this is my reading voice, so I'm just reading it right off his column. Comic retailers are currently buying under a plan that, although tweaked over the years, is essentially the same buying structure that was put on the table by Phil Suling 46 years ago. As one of the supposed old guard, this is Phil talking, because he's been working his store for 35 years, he wasn't even selling comics when the deal was struck. To add fuel to the fire, we're mired in old policy. Diamond's monthly printed discount terms are based on sales data from 2006. I don't see this as a Diamond problem as much as a problem that no publisher wants to be the one to put their foot down and make the changes that needed to be made. Fleecing the retailer base is wonderful for the bottom line until everyone can't pay their bills anymore. And this is something that even we've talked about just with me having Hot Comics and just about retailers in general. Retailers are the customer. Publishers are trying to sell to the retailers, hoping you will go to the retailers and buy it. They are not so much, I mean, yeah, they want you to buy the comic, obviously, and you're ultimately the end product, but comic retailers buy the product non-refundable. That means if they decide, since, what was that? What was the one with the infamous Bat Dick?
Batman Damned.
So if Batman Damned sold out, it was a instant hit that they loaded up so heavy on Batman number 2, Damned, and then nobody decides to buy it. They are essentially stuck with it. And actually, that's one of the problems they talk about is that, and we'll probably get to it. You know, yeah, sure, you got all these piles of Batman 2, but there's no way to get Batman Damned 1 because they're not reprinting it. Because even if they did reprint it, there'd be no Bat Dick in it, and so who the hell would want it anyways? But so Phil lists 8 problems. I'm essentially going to read the problems just verbatim the way he wrote them, and then we'll talk about it. And as usual, Cory and I will have the correct solution because that's how damn good we are.
We are a national treasure.
We are. So number 1, the problem, 90% of the books coming off the stands at the end of their shelf life have 0 value as a back issue. After 3 months, many books become box fillers and dead items that take up space. No one is looking for a 3-issue miniseries 6 months removed unless it features a new character and there's a rumor circulating about his or her inclusion in a movie that was possibly greenlit. Between February and October, Phil had a cost of nearly $100,000 in books that were taken off the stands. 60% were instantly unsellable. 30% will languish if they're still there 6 months. Cory, what would you find as the solution for this?
My solution is that comic shop owners need to get away from the idea of a back issue market. Notice how he wrote about this. They have 0 value as a back issue. Unless there's a movie, they're not worth anything. Well, of course they're not worth anything. DC and Marvel have been trading their books. You know, everything goes into a trade. They've been doing that for over a decade. Digital is here and pervasive with Marvel Unlimited and DC Nation and Comixology. It's like you talked about, Batman Damned. Oh, the comic shop doesn't have it. Here, let me get out my tablet. I have it now. It's literally that quick. So the shops need to quit thinking about back issues and collectability. And one of the themes going through this is he's still stuck in that mindset of, well, the direct market, we get these books at a discount and they're ours, and we can sell them if we want, but we can also save them because they might be worth money someday. They're not. You order for the shelf conservatively, and you have miniseries left over. Do what you and I did. You bundle them and sell them at cost. You have to start thinking of monthly comics the same way a grocery store thinks about perishables. They don't load up on tomatoes and hope that in 6 months those tomatoes will still be sellable, because they're not sellable after 2 weeks. You have to change your mindset. Again, you're looking at a lot of the pre-orders. You've got to be more guided by pre-orders. You've got, this guy's got, let's say he's just got 20 years of sales history in his computer. He should know, okay, a Marvel miniseries featuring a second-tier character sells this many copies. Boom, there you go. It's that easy. You quit thinking of it as an investment. Quit thinking of it that you need those boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of old comics. When we went to Captain Jack's, boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of old comics. And I would imagine that many of those comics have been there since they opened. And many of them will be there after you and I are dead. Joe?
I guess I see what you're saying there, because I think that was the same thing I thought of, where he's, this guy he's too old school, thinking that, the old back issue becomes instantly collectible. I didn't do that with Hot Comics or Crazy Comics. I basically tried to pair to order. And for me, it wasn't so much of a problem as I had 90% of my sales. Well, I guess it varied. Probably about 80 to 90% were geared towards pull list people. And the things on the shelf were more extra gravy. So even if I looked at everything on the shelf, it was all paid for, assuming everybody came in and picked up their normal subscription ad. So if I turn around and did like Cory would do for me, bundle up things and drop them for $1, which sold quite a bit, or I'd go to one of the local cons and basically I would clear the shelves out of almost everything except either things that were hot or things that were new, and sometimes even then, and just go to the con and I'd blow everything out at $1. Because every $1 I sold was $1 more in my pocket, because pretty much everything was paid for. I see this every so often when I go to different shops and I talk to them about, would you want to donate things for charity? And they're like, well, we got to get our money back on it. And it's like, well, how many did you buy? How many did you sell? You've probably made your money back, especially since you've got 25 boxes of pull orders on it. So anything you get for it, be it $0.25, a penny, or $100, in the case of, Batman Damn #1, that's money in the bank already. I don't know what his racking system is. More and more I'm seeing the type of racking that Hot Comics kind of vanguarded, where you have the 45-degree shelf with a large lip, and you just have old issues stockpiled. So you can actually go back and dig backwards and try to pick up old issues. I didn't make back issues out of these things until they would start tipping over the lip. A third thing I did was, of course, every Tuesday, and it didn't matter if it was Crazy Comics or Hot Comics, I just went and I counted everything and just see how things would sell. It didn't really it gave me good data for forward, but I question whether or not, 20 years of sales data is going to help you any, because, you're going to look back, wow, look at that. Avengers was selling really well. Well, yeah, that's when Buzak was writing it. Or Swamp Thing was selling super. Well, yeah, that's when Alan Moore had it going. I don't think old Sandman data is going to give you any insights on how to order the new Vertigo line that, although Neil Gaiman's vanguarding, he's not writing any of it. So I'm always questionable of that. I do agree, miniseries and things like that are real tough to order. You almost got to go real light. And something you told me years ago, Cory, if you sell out, you haven't lost any money.
Right.
Yeah, somebody may need to go to another shop and get it. I had an advantage, of course, where with the other Hot Comics We traded constantly, and even when I had crazy comics, I traded with Kristen at Hot Comics New Hope, and Nick, of course, at the Source. And
this guy's got how many stores?
I don't even know. I'd have to
Yeah,
look.
they don't
He says
say
he's
how
got
many
a
stores,
chain.
but yeah, you know, move the books around.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about a chain. Schindler's did that all the time. Oh, this sold out at this shop. All right, they've got 5 over here. Let's move 4 of them over to the shop where it sold out.
Yeah. And again, he may be doing that. We're not saying he isn't, but those are just things that we could do. You, as a consumer, I would say if you're not using previews or at least looking through it, you probably could. You could really help your retailer by doing that. Or if they stock like Comic Shop News or any of the online stuff, just let them know what you want. Let them know what they don't want, because just like we've talked about in the past, your retailer is probably, by the time you decide I'm going to drop Avengers, he's already ordered 2 or 3 more issues of it for you that he's just going to eat. And generally, it's not a big deal if you pick up something else or even if you continue shopping there. Those are pretty much the bottom line things that we think you can do. With problem number 2, he states reboots. No surprise, but every jumping on point creates in its wake a jumping off point. There's a greater concern, though, continuity. No, not continuity of Spider-Man wearing a hat on page 3 when he had it on his head cut off on page 2. Continuity of series collecting. The industry was built on reading and collecting comics. When you reboot, what has gone before is no longer valid, which contributes to the 90% mention in problem number 1. With the prevalence of reboots, fans no longer feel invested as they know nothing is any more permanent than the current creative team. Cory?
Comic fans follow creators. So when a new creator comes on the book, it needs to be treated as a new run, unless it's a book that's going to sell no matter who's on it. And there are very few of those. Batman, Spider-Man. Used to be the X-Men, but the X-Men aren't there anymore. For the most part, people are following creators. So he and other retailers and even fans need to stop talking and thinking about comics like it's the 90s, where it's an ongoing soap opera it's all part of one big long story. That's not how it is anymore. That kind of storytelling doesn't work anymore. It's why DC's done so many reboots, because really that whole it's an ongoing story that goes on forever, that used to be, I would jump in and get caught up. Readers aren't like that anymore. There's too much out there. They're going to go, I don't know what the hell's going on, and they're going to move on. Also, when a creative team comes on, I'll just mention Batman. Tom King, when he took over Batman, he said, I have a 100-issue story. Here it is. DC signed on for it. That's how the system works now, because it's so much more creator driven. And when the editors try to impose that they're telling the story and not the creators, that's when sales nosedive. That's what killed the New 52. The other thing is that this retailer keeps thinking he's selling collectibles. You aren't. You're selling entertainment. You're selling books. It's like a TV season. All right, TV is written in seasons. There's some where every episode is separate. There's some where it's an entire season. But every season, they we got to kind of do a restart. We're going to tie things up. We got to bring in new people, because there's what is known in comics, in movies, in TV, as general attrition. As you go on, especially in comics, they've shown this, that if there's not a big event or a big change, you're going to lose 2% of your readers every month, even if it's the same creative team, even if nothing changes. You lose 2% every month. The other thing that he's got to remember is he's got competition, trades, video games, I can read DC Comics on my Roku through DC Nation. If he's thinking he's selling collectibles, he's an antique store. And Joe, who goes to antique stores?
I don't know. I haven't been to one in a while.
Yeah, old people.
Although I do like going there.
Yeah, but you don't buy a lot. It's old people.
I know my daughters, they're definitely not antique shoppers.
Yeah.
You won't see them wandering through.
So if that's going to be your business model, that you're selling collectibles and you're talking about collecting comics, congratulations, you're phasing yourself out. That's not how it is now. It's a different world. The people who are buying Spider-Man because they've bought it for 30 years are a tiny fraction of the audience. You've got to... Yes, they do reboots. But the thing is, they're not really reboots. It's okay, we're getting a new number one. Why? Because it's a new creative team and they're telling a new story. The old creative team wrapped up their story, and this new creative team's coming on, and the number one is like, okay, this is the first episode of a new season. You need to quit worrying about that sort of thing. And, for his thing of, we need to go back to the old numbering, well, Marvel tried it and their sales tanked. They listened to you and it failed. You've got to move on from the people who think that comics are like day trading in the stock market. Oh, if I keep buying this Spider-Man, my entire run will be worth... No, buy a 401k. It's entertainment. That's how people see it now, and it's more and more how comic publishers are looking at it, because the back issue market is dead. It's just dead, and
they don't make money off the back issue market anyways.
No.
I mean, that's one thing you got to remember. They may occasionally do a second print, third print, fourth print, or they may print something that, which I always thought they should. If they suddenly see, oh my gosh, look, we got a big interest in the first appearance of Captain Marvel, well, reprint that as True Believers. Hey, here it is, for people who want to jump on, or even, everybody went nuts when they announced The Rock was going to be Black Adam, so Shazam number 28 is now a $300 comic. Reprint it. There may be some rights to it that we're, behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about, but, you're reprinting everything else as True Believers. Why not jump on board? I remember telling somebody at Marvel that when Night Nurse was super hot, and I said, you want a quickie? Just reprint those 4 issues as a throwaway book like you did Death of Superman, because it was the 5 issues in a $4.99 trade that was printed on cheap paper just so people could jump on board and get all excited about it and call it the non-essential Night Nurse. And he looked at me like he was crazy. But I thought, well, you brought Night Nurse back a couple years later in Doctor Strange and I think Daredevil. But
yeah,
the other thing too, and this is something
the Marvel Netflix shows.
It's something I thought about when I had the big stores. Every time they canceled a series, I thought about half pricing the remainder books that were on the shelf. But I also noticed that a lot of times I wasn't buying a lot of those anyways. A classic case was when the New 52 was coming. Oh, I can guarantee you everybody was ordering less and less of all of Marvel or DC's books because they just... Why are you going to invest in books that are dying? I mean, that's one of the reasons why the later Power Girl issues are so high priced, because nobody was buying, no one was paying attention. Same thing with Transformers. But you're talking, that's a long-term thing. Here you are years later, and suddenly people are realizing, hey, these early issues are collectible because no one was buying them. That has nothing to do with the retailer. And again, if you're paying attention to number one, they're going to cancel it. You should probably be cutting back anyways. You don't need to have one of everything on the shelf. When I had Hot Comics, I could put one of everything on the shelf. I could afford to do that. When I had Crazy Comics, I didn't. There were Marvels and DCs I didn't put on the shelf. I'd order them if somebody wanted them, but I didn't have the rack space, and I figured I'm not going to waste time putting it on the shelf just to have it sit there. And then, of course, when the con runs around, blow it out. So at the reboot thing, I think this is, like you kept saying, it's a different market. I don't know if a kid, and by kid I mean like my daughters, who are 18 and 26, so they're not really kids. They're going to walk in and see, oh, look at that, Action Comics 1005. Well, I'm not going to buy that. They're more prone to pick up a graphic novel.
Yep.
I don't see a lot of kids going online. I think that's more us because we want to read these books, but we don't want to buy the back issues or the graphic novels.
That's the one thing we're not getting. We're not getting a lot of information on who's buying this stuff digitally. We know what books are selling digitally, but we don't know who's buying them.
But I can just, and again, this is just, how do you say, anecdotal information?
Yeah.
None of my daughters, they may get Netflix and Hulu on their phone and online. They're not getting Marvel, DC online. They don't care. They're not thinking, I'm going to go read this comic book online. If anything, if they suddenly get a gumption, I might want to check out this Miles Morales or I might want to check out Aquaman because it was a really cool movie. Maybe they might go into a comic store and look for a graphic novel. Although I can guarantee the guy that they see on the screen is going to have nothing to do with the person in the current comic of the books. So
Miles Morales is like the comic.
Well, and even the we talked about Marvel Adventures or Action Superman or Spider-Man, the line from IDW that may buy in there. He did talk about something where he says publishers should commit to a 5-year plan, and we are seeing that.
Here's the problem with that 5-year plan: it does not include you, Mr. Comic Retailer.
No, and also it's things like when you talk about the War of the Realms is something that's been set up since. Who is it? Jason Aaron's?
Yeah, since he's
that
was part of his pitch for Thor.
Yeah.
Here's what my Thor story is going to be. Or Batman's going to lead up to issue 100 and it's going to be a big deal. And that was part of what they set up.
Hickman was Secret Wars,
Yeah.
And this was something that you and I butted heads about when we were rebooting comics in the 80s. Right now, that's the way to do it. Set up a plan and go for it. I still maintain that would not work in the 80s. Because you look at what they tried to do that in the 80s with like Excalibur or even in the aforementioned Aquaman, and or even in Flash, people were getting bored because these storylines went on forever and they just have no ending. The key is to make it look like it's, if it's a 100-issue plan, that kind of takes some of the magic out of it. And then, of course, there's always the question of, well, what happens if the plan isn't selling?
Yeah.
So, but that's
there
a publisher
have been a
problem.
lot of things at Marvel where the creator came on and had like a 5-year plan for the book, but it didn't sell well enough. Black Bolt's the best example I can think of because that creator came on and said, here are all these stories I want to tell. Well, guess what? You got 12 issues. And by issue 6 or 7, they're saying, okay, this is where we know it will no longer be profitable, so wrap it up by here.
And they will do the opposite, too. That's why we have Ms. Marvel as a character. That was supposed to be a 6-issue miniseries, and then they were saying, hey, this is selling really well. Keep it going. Problem number 3, first issues. The most abusive part of comic ordering. Let's define a first issue. Any issue ordered with no previous sales data for the title. If it's weekly, then every issue ordered before we have a week of sales data on the number 1 is the number 1 for ordering purposes. If it's a one-shot, it's a number 1. If it's a number 1, it's just number 1. Just clarifying on that one. Every number 1 these days seems to be double size, larger than normal size, adds $1 or more to the number 1 cover price, exasperating retailers' exposures. Mr. Strode.
Number 1s have been double sized for a long time. Back into the 80s. Matter of fact, G.I. Joe number 1 was triple sized with a special cover. Because I remember it came out, it was $1.50, and it had a cardboard cover rather than a regular cover. And,
well, that's a regular series, though.
Yeah.
What if it's a one-shot?
Well, my solution is to treat number 1 issues like all other comics. Who's the creative team? Is the character one that people are interested in? What are you going to do to sell the book? Because
Okay,
if you're not
I'll
going to
even
put
point
in
out.
any work, it's not going to sell.
I'll even point out the one that I was interested in and I decided not to. And Marvel is probably the worst on this. 5 number 1 issues on the Defenders with no regular series on the horizon.
Yeah, and when they pitched it, they said this is the beginning of the Defenders, and then it's like, okay, there's the first issue, and then nothing.
Yeah, that I will agree with him 100%. Or even just one like I made the mistake of picking up Typhoid Mary X-Men, which apparently is a bunch of one-shots all dealing with Typhoid Mary. Why isn't it a miniseries? Why is it 5 number 1s? Basically, you suckered me in to buying this one because I thought, oh, X-Men Typhoid Mary, that should be fun. What If's another thing. They do a bunch of number 1 what ifs. Every month they do like 5 of them. I think I didn't mean to butt in on you on this one,
No,
but this one
okay.
almost like cuts down on it. Yeah, if it's a number 1 for a series like G.I. Joe, yeah, I got no problems with that. And that actually led to the phenomena that was in the 80s where number 2s ended up being worth more than number 1s because every retailer would order a lot of number 1s because every Marvel number 1 would sell out. And number 2s would cut back, number 3s would cut back, and so on and so on. They've kind of address that because they do have final order cutoff, so you can adjust your orders. What is it, up to a week now? Maybe 2 weeks? Really close. They didn't have that when I had a comic shop, so I don't have a lot of experience with this. So I agree with you on that. But boy, annuals, one-shots, standalones. My favorite story, which I've actually said a number of times because of the Avengers, Thanos Quest. Who the hell was going to buy was it a $3 book when comics were $1, $2?
Yeah, it was what they called the Dark Knight format, the Prestige format. It was a square-bound book drawn by Starlin. And, of course, I, being a huge Starlin fan, was all over it. But it didn't sell well because it was, Silver Surfer was still climbing in sales. It wasn't a huge sales hit.
Well, and I even was pushing it because, people, hey, if you're reading this, you got to read this because it's going to tie into this Infinity Gauntlet coming up.
But he talks about the weekly books. Most of the weekly books from DC, they have a returnable policy. Marvel's doing another weekly thing with the Avengers. We'll just go back and look at your sales at the previous time the Avengers went weekly because it's the exact same creative team. Use those sales figures. For these, like the Typhoid Mary thing, the reason they're putting it out is for the Netflix show because they were using her as a villain in Netflix. So you should know how well those sell. Look at your sales of Iron Fist and Luke Cage and stuff like that.
See, I don't even know if that would matter. There is no reliable sales data on Iron Fist because there hasn't been a weekly series in how long?
There's been a monthly series for the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I would say that wouldn't even apply because it's, again, if it's that damn important, I think it should just be in the regular series. Or maybe, like I said, make it a mini series. You don't have a bunch of 5 number 1s. I mean, in my gabbing, we've talked so far about 15 number 1s for just, What If, Defenders, Typhoid Mary.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be a bunch of number 1s?
Yeah.
You sucked me into buying one. I'm not buying the others, especially now when I know it's going to be on in a graphic novel probably once it's all done.
That's the other thing that retailers need to think of. The reason they're putting these books out, like the Typhoid Mary, like the Defenders, like that, is to ameliorate the cost of the trade paperback. And the trade paperback is aimed at, Typhoid Mary, that's at the Netflix people. The Defenders, that's the nostalgia people. How much are you willing to put on your shelf to pay the creators so that when the trade paperback comes out, most of the costs have already been paid for? You need to cut close to the bone, and you need to be very aware of what these books are. The Uncanny X-Men being a weekly, That's very different than a 5-issue Typhoid Mary series, which is very different from a DC one-shot, which has a bunch of short stories by new creators in, etc., etc., etc.
What about the upcoming Avengers weekly series that's outside the normal comic book?
That's the exact same team who did the Avengers No Surrender. Me, if I were a shop, I'd order it exactly the same way.
I don't even know if I would. Although, like I said, the one thing I'd be pushing is if you've been pushing Conan, you'd be saying, people, you want to pay attention to this particular storyline because it ties in. See, and that's something too. If it's that damn good, why don't you just put it into the regular series? Which again probably ties into way back in the so-called legacy numbering, which isn't itself a selling point. And we've talked about it before, and we're going to get up to it when we get to number 4. You know, first issues for the most part sell. I mean, you get a lot of people trying them. I don't envy the retailers because, you know, for every one you have, like, okay, well, Frank Miller did Dark Knight. It sold really well. He's doing Ronin. This is going to be cool. It tanked.
Nope, the other way around. He did Ronin first, and because it didn't do real well, Dark Knight number 1, the retailers didn't order as many, and DC was like, you're going to want more of these. And that's why Dark Knight number 1, they did 5 printings.
So we're pro number 1s for regular series. I am anti number 1s if it's not. And I really dislike one-shots. You know, unless it's a standalone fun one. Like, what was the one, hang on, I gotta look it up.
The most recent one that I picked up was the DC Nuclear Winter Special, which was a bunch of short stories with Green Arrow and Superman and Batman, etc., etc., etc. And it was basically, okay, here's our winter special with a bunch of newer talent.
No, I was thinking Ziggy Pig number 1 that was just ordered last month. That's coming out. Yeah, that's fun stuff.
So let's go to
number 4. But now problem
4.
number 4, special covers from issue to issue. And we've even talked about this. He calls it predatory publishing. 14 covers on number 1, 4 on number 2, one of which is a Scotty Young variant, which is a promotion of the month cover. Number 3 has 1 cover, but number 4 has 3 covers again. It's an obvious ploy to keep retailers from gauging actual interest in the title, and it inevitably leads to unsold books on the stand. Without some degree of stability, we're ordering blind.
Joe, I'm going to use one of your lines. This is a you thing, not a publisher thing. Publishers do this because you as a retailer are buying them. They offer these covers because you're buying them. You're willing to buy the extra copies to get them. I say use the DCB service approach, whereas, okay, you as a fan, if you want this cover, it's going to cost you this much.
And that's not even a good guide because a lot of the times you're going to find some bobo on eBay selling it for less.
Right.
For every one book that is out of the stratosphere expensive, like Spider-Man 700, the unused Ditko cover?
Yeah.
Which has never come down in price. You're going to get a book that, hey, this is the rare 1 in 20 black and white special cover variant. And my cost is 20 regular issues, but some guy's selling it for cover price on the eBays.
Yeah. So,
and I find that even with Discount Comic Service. I love the Dynamic Forces Virgin cover cosplay for, Vampirella, Betty Page, Red Sonja. They go for $8 to $15 if I buy them through Discount Comic Service, but some guy inevitably has them on eBay's for $5.
Yeah.
Which means they're a comic shop that ordered way too many and they're just trying to get their money back, or somebody just, raced to the bottom to try to get the as many as they can sold because they overordered.
Now, when they started these variant covers, it was kind of to crank up the sales a little bit. Okay, most people are ordering 50 number 1s. All right, so if you order 60 number 1s, we'll throw in this special cover for you. And there's a difference between, okay, I can order an extra 10, I get this cover, I sell it for the amount of these extra 10 books, and then I have these extra 10 number ones. And that's how it should be used. But instead, you have people who, well, I want the Scotty Young cover. Okay, well, I guess I got to order 75 copies. You need to charge that person the amount, the extra amount that it's going to cost you as a retailer to get it. If you're not, if you as a retailer are chasing those special covers, you as a retailer, it's your problem, not the retailers. The comic companies are not putting a gun to your head and saying, you have to order this X-Men comic that we put a cover from an old Jim Lee trading card on. You're the one who's going, oh, I got to have that. You're a business.
Now, Phil goes off onto a sidebar where he talks about, Phil goes on to make a point about 4-issue spin-off miniseries, barely sequitur to anything type stuff that just come out of the blue and go nowhere. And we've talked about that in the past, where all of a sudden miniseries just pop up and you're like, well, what's this got to do with anything? I'm not necessarily talking about like, I'm trying to think, for like every one like Black Order that comes out, where it comes off the original Avenger title, where if you want to read it, you can, but you don't have to, versus something that just comes in out of the blue. Defenders, I'm looking at you. And, even those come with like multiple variant covers, things like that. My view is if it ties in, it's fine. If it's just nothing, like, oh, we just decided to pull this one out of the hat. Marvel was really insidious in the 90s because they did 3-issue miniseries, which means you had to order all 3 of them before you even knew how they would sell. Because a lot of times what I think they'd find is people would order 1, 2, and then they discover we got a stinker on our hands, and they'd cut back, and it was usually too late. I'm curious, Cory, what do you think about things like the promotion of the month covers, where they say, oh, okay, we're going to do a Ms. Marvel cover for every single Marvel comic, even though she doesn't appear in anything but her own Ms. Marvel book?
If the collectors want it, cool. I have never been a special cover guy. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. And Joe, you've got 20, almost 30 years of me saying I don't care about special covers.
Well, these are same price, though.
Right, but I don't care.
So
the only time I've ever ordered a special cover is the Tom Ballard, Tom Ballard Black Panther cover. Because I thought that image was so wonderful, and I liked the fact that Marvel went to him and said, we want this. He didn't draw it for Marvel. He drew it because, he was sitting at the theater and he saw kids doing that. And I thought, that's cool. I want to support that. He's an artist I like. But for the most part, the special covers are for the collector's market. You need to treat it like a Hummel figure or a Beanie Baby or any of those things.
Now let's pick on Archie for a minute, because Archie's been known to do 14 different covers, but they're all the same price. They're not like a lot of the incentive type covers that Marvel and DC love to foister on people. So how do you feel about something like that?
I think if it works for them, that's cool. I don't understand the reasoning behind it, simply because the incentive covers are to get you to buy more. The Archie special covers, as long as they let you order the cover you want, I would say, if your pre-order people are ordering the special covers, go ahead, get them for your subscribers. But for the most part, just get the regular cover.
Now you got a super mega event that's coming, and everybody's excited about it. All the books are tying into it. Now you have 25 miniseries that are alongside of the regular series. And we've seen it with almost everybody, Final Crisis Rogue Gallery. Here's Secret Wars, minor characters that can't hold their own books. and I'm sure with War of the Realms we'll have it. Heck, even what's the big one? There's one going on now that Infinity War. So they have the Infinity Wars, and here's Infinity War Spider-Man, one-shot Infinity War miniseries X-Men. I think that also ties into there too. It's like you got this special event, and you're slapping in all these extra tie-ins. How the hell do you order that? I mean, a regular Spider-Man guy isn't necessarily going to buy the Spider-Man Infinity War tie-in because he might not be buying Infinity War to begin with.
This is where, as a retailer, your records need to be. You need to go to your records. Okay.
I don't think the records would matter.
Well, let me finish. You've got a record of all of these events. You can see how the events sold and how the tie-in miniseries sell. So let's say, okay, going back to Civil War, I have the record for all of the tie-in miniseries, and they normally sell about 60% for the main characters and 30 to 40% for the characters who don't have, the Dark Hawks. Okay, look, here's a new Infinity War. Okay, looks like from pre-orders it's gonna sell around 100 copies. It's gonna sell about 100 copies. All right, for the Spider-Man tie-in, I'll order 60 copies. For the Dark Hawk tie-in, I'm gonna order 30 to 40 copies. That's based on the history I have. Now, there are two things going on. If that first issue of Infinity War comes out and it's been a week and you've still got 40 of them on the stands, you go to that final order cutoff and you cut your orders. Conversely, if you start selling out of this stuff, you start ordering from Diamond. Diamond has copies there that you can buy, and if they don't, when they get enough orders, Marvel will do a second print, and they jump up and down and send out a press release about it. You're never going to lose money selling off everything off the stands. But your history, your tracking, and now your your point of sale system tracks everything.
Now, my question is, as a buyer of these series, how big are you into all these extra miniseries and one-shots that get tacked onto the main event?
It depends on the idea behind the tie-ins. For Infinity War, I like the idea of, Spider-Man's merging with this character, and this character's merging with this character. Now, let's remember that I'm a trade buyer, so I'm also going to read how good they were, because if it's like, what was the DC? I forget. Convergence. If it's like Convergence, where the reviews are coming out and it's like, oh my God, this is terrible, I'm not ordering that trade. But if the reviews are, I can stand a mediocre review if I'm interested in the idea. The best one for that is Secret Invasion. I love that idea. So when the reviews came out that, the tie-ins they're okay. They're not great. Cool. I like the idea. I'm going to buy it. But as a retailer, you've got to go by your history. That's why you have it.
I still think that's a bunch of brouhaha, because I still don't buy that Civil War equals Infinity War equals Final War. I don't think the data crosses over from miniseries to miniseries, from event to event. To me, what you're doing is you're making it a lot tougher on the retailer to try to order. If you're going to, give them free copies or allow extra discount, or you're going to give them, what did they, like Wizard used to do? I'd order 25, they'd send me 25, return what I don't, returnability, that type of thing. But man, I don't care how, you're just, pardon me, you're just fucking the retailer on this. I mean, you're fucking me as a consumer when I'm looking through these preview catalogs and I see I got the main event and I got 25 tie-on titles. We can't afford that. Only the most hardcore old fan is buying that. None of the new fans are buying this. They're going to do like me. They're going to go pick up, oh, look, Typhoid Mare, Spider-Man, X-Men. I have no clue what's going on. I'm not buying the rest. I don't care if it does say at the end, oh yeah, there's 4 other issues. I'm not going to go back and buy 4 more issues just to make sense of the one you screwed me on.
Here's
It's
the
got to be
problem.
cut out.
Here's the problem with that,
Joe.
Joe. Why would a company cut it out if they're still making money on it? The reason they do this is because it works.
And then they wonder why the retailers are disappearing. And this is actually going to tie into number 4. Because what's happening is, you're basically bleeding the retailers dry. You're not bleeding the customers dry. You're bleeding the retailers. And you're not doing anything to support them and help them. Because you don't care. They're going to buy this stuff and it's gone. Do you ever come back and you say, hey, how did this sell? How'd it go? You don't even have retailer reps that go out into the field anymore to find out how things sold. Or, you just kind of go by social media, which is not a bad tool to figure out what kind of talk is on it.
But the problem with that is you're saying that the retailers keep getting screwed. I would say if you're a retailer and if you've been in business for 10 years and you're still buying stuff that you know isn't going to sell, that's
not what they're buying. No, it's the next previews we'll look at. I'll bring this issue up because I can almost guarantee there's going to be a crossover with 25 extra things on it. And do you need the extra things?
Do you need
Secret
them?
Wars was a perfect example, but they shouldn't be there to begin with. That's my bottom line.
They sell.
No, they don't. They don't always
sell. Why do retailers keep buying them?
Then why can I go to the next con coming up?
Joe.
Why can I go to the next con and find boxes and boxes of them in the dollar bins?
Because
they did not sell.
Bought them.
They did not sell. They should not have been published. It's a waste of trees. I don't think we'll agree. See, I'm arguing from a retailer standpoint. You've got the pie sky thing because no matter what happens, you're okay. I'm talking from the retailers, and I don't buy. And again, I didn't have this type of data. For me, the closest thing I had was amalgam, and everybody was excited for amalgam. That was the big difference. And not all of them sold equally either. But how do you order them? Because it was something new. I mean, I think Black Claw was the only one that actually had any heat on it in the back issue market. Everything else was kind of like, well.
But here's the thing I'm saying that you're missing. World War Hulk had a bunch of tie-ins. I could go to a comic shop and I can still buy them as comics. So when the next one came out, why did the retailers say, well, it didn't work last time, but I better load up on them this time? That's poor business.
That sounds more like a stereotype. But to me, the question is, okay, World War Hulk didn't sell, but is Secret Wars going to sell? Is War of the Realm going to sell? What possible sales data can I have from War of the Realms that's going to help me tie in order correctly?
Every other crossover in the past.
Because Marvel, I don't buy that every other crossover necessarily has pertinent data for this one.
I think they all do.
The
fans know. Here's the main story, and here are the tie-ins.
I disagree because for every Secret Wars you have the what was that goofy thing that came out where they turned all these hammers were turning people into ungodly, stoppable gods.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. Not Siege. It was after that. The Fallen.
It was Fear Itself.
Fear Itself. Oh, nope. Nobody cared. Nobody was listening. So, and that actually corresponded because I think after a few of those, Marvel said, you know what, we're going to go a year without a mega event.
And guess
because
what
you go back
to their
to
sales?
the podcast. But the thing was, it was diminishing returns because the fans weren't buying every 4 months is another major event. And maybe you don't need to have a whole universe-shattering event every month, or like what we used to talk about, it's the summer thing. Maybe the X-Men are going to have their little world-shattering thing. Avengers will have theirs. Spider-Man will have his, and then do a big one in the summertime. Or do a real impressive crossover like Avengers Crossing. Oh, no, that was not a good one. What was the one when they were in outer space and had to kill the Supreme?
That was, what was that?
Operation something, I don't know. So,
But that didn't have miniseries. That just every book in the Avengers family had a chapter.
yeah.
And they
And,
don't do that anymore
no,
because
they don't.
eventually that sales trick didn't work. Retailers quit buying them.
I'm going to reach out to a couple of my retailer friends and ask them this. Does your past history help you order future history special events? Or do you just go like what you said, kind of go with the buzz? And I think this is a problem we're going to come up with number 8. And so we'll revisit this when we come up to it. Number 5 is one we probably can't really talk too much about, discounts. Because again, this is a retailer problem, not necessarily a customer problem. And Phil writes, I have expected expenses for business. Labor's on the rise. Insurance costs have skyrocketed. After 7 years of double-digit growth, sales have been mostly flat over the last 2 years. Prices go up, but it just means fewer comics sold for more money. The math is I can no longer allow publisher space at a 50% non-returnable discount. Sale tail is too short. The variables are too many, which is probably what we were bitching about the last time, to accurately gauge sell-through. I have 2,000 dedicated fans of all things geeky coming through my doors a week. You get access to them, my smiling staff, my well-lit stores, our reputation as a great comic store. I'm paying a lot to provide that. Psst, I think he's talking to retailers or to the publisher.
Yeah.
You have your expenses. I have mine. That Marvel that sells $4.99 books to Walmart that go 3 for $5 means that the cost of these books are substantially cheaper than what they could be sold to for us.
Here's what he's not getting. He's got to diversify. Oh, I only get a 50% discount. You know what? That bookstore, they get a 20% discount. Yeah, it's returnable, but it's 20%. That restaurant that you go to, guess what? Their profit margin is 2%. The grocery store, their profit margin maybe 5%, and they've got perishables. If you're getting 50% and you can't make money on it, you've got to diversify. You've got to get in other stuff. You can't just sell comics anymore. Barnes & Noble, our sales are dropping. I guess we're going to have an ebook reader. I guess we're going to have to bring in coffee. I guess we're going to have to do other things to try and bring people into the store who aren't there to buy comics. Your people who come in, your Wednesday warriors, they're getting less and less every year, not because comics aren't bringing in new people. They are. It's because your customers are getting older. The customer who's going to come in to pick up his Wednesday stuff, he's probably been doing it for a good 15 to 20 years. He's in his 40s. He's in his 50s. What have they done to bring in new comic shop people other than Free Comic Book Day? And we can get into that at some other point because I don't think shops do it right. And we're going to get into some of the other problems. But right now, it's okay. You get 50%. You have no idea what a glorious discount that is if you've only worked in comics retail. Every other retail in the world has much less of a profit margin.
Maybe you don't have to give away 30% to your subscribers.
Right. You don't have to give away the big discount, but you've also got to bring in other stuff. Look at The Source. You know why The Source is so successful? They've got comics, they've got trades, they've got manga, they've got gaming, they've got shirts, they've got food. I was reading up on one retailer who talked about, I can't stock Magic anymore because the people come and they sit around and they don't spend any money, da-da-da-da-da. And I just sent an email that said, well, are you selling soda and snacks and stuff? And he said, well, I don't want to get into that. Well, then... sorry, you're an idiot. You're going to go out of business. Look at what you did at Hot Comics. Okay, you brought in the soda machine. You brought in snacks. You brought in weird candies that people couldn't get anywhere else. That brought in the people walking by. You don't need you've got to quit seeing yourself as we are a comic shop and it's 1989. No, you are a pop culture shop and you need to own it and you need to grow with it. And that's my advice because when he says we need a bigger discount and Marvel and DC can publish this stuff cheaper, yeah, they can because at Walmart's taking the remainder stuff. Much like when you sell your books at $1 a pop, you've already made profit. Marvel and DC, this is the stuff that's sitting in the warehouse that they haven't sold. So they're selling at pennies on the dollar. It's called remainders. Go to your Barnes & Noble. You know that section with the deep discounted books? That's remainders. That's the stuff that's left over that they haven't sold. If you're not making a profit on 50%, you've got to figure out a better way to do business. Joe?
I think I'm pretty much in agreement on you on that because, I mean, I did it through my stores and even the other Crazy Comics, which was only 500 square feet versus the 3,300 square feet I had in the Odd Comics St. Paul. And, another problem they're going to have is that, and even you and I talk about it, a lot of online retailers are selling their stuff at, cheap. And some of it, I think, is because they do that so that they can get enough sold to buy the super premiums and then sell them to make their money at.
And it's also volume. They're selling in volume. And when you sell in bigger volume, like Walmart, you can still sell stuff cheaper.
Yeah.
That's why something at Target is cheaper than at Bob's store down the street.
Yeah. And one thing, and this goes into a different argument, but it kind of ties in. You got to really remember, comic books are a niche market.
And
they are sold to a niche luxury market. Only people who are going into comic stores are your comic fans, or if you happen to make yourself a presence by being involved in the community. Again, with Free Comic Book Day, you're the place to go. You've got a media rep. You got things like that. He's got to be doing something right because he says he's a chain of stores and while we get a pause here, I'll Google Coliseum of Comics to see how many stores they have. But yeah, and part of the discount too is, you got to work creatively, budget for it. I mean, Todd McFarlane used to complain about that he sold so many Spawn books that they were paying for all the books that people would order and wouldn't sell. And he didn't think it was fair. He thought you should be ordering more Spawn books, not me supporting everybody else, which is kind of a weird argument, but I guess I understand what he's saying. And, if you can't sell it, don't buy it. You don't have to carry everything. Number 6, and this is kind of tied into what I just segued to, the problem, books without a market. Phil says, if I'm selling less than 10 copies as a chain of 8 stores, there, we already know the question, 8 stores, then it's subscription only. When carrying a book of lower sale titles, we only had a 73, let me try this again. When carrying books of lower sale titles, we had only a 73% sell-through over 6 months for a profit of 30%. As such, books are selling pretty much only do special orders. When a customer drops the title, we eat it. And I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit. What do you think, Mr. Strode?
The idea that a book doesn't have a market is interesting, as the retailer says he's gone subscription only on the books. So if you've gone subscription only on the books, that's a guaranteed sale. And I get into it a little bit. That's the way it has to work. There isn't anything a publisher can do on this one because they're only publishing things that make a profit or, as I said earlier, to ameliorate costs for selling it in another market. The best example I can think of is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. There are people who, the sales on that are terrible. I don't know why Marvel's printing it. Well, because when they print it as a regular comic, that pays the artist and the writer and the inker and the colorist their salary. And then when it goes to trade paperbacks or to digital or to Scholastic, That's where it has its big sales. The regular monthly comic basically is just to pay the creators while they're working on it so that they get, 5 or 6 issues that can be put into a book. Nobody publishes anything at a loss. Period. End of statement. Mark Evanier, who knows more than any of us, says the only reason a comic is canceled is because it's not making money. But as a retailer, you have to know your market. If you're primarily a Marvel DC superhero store, then nothing Oni Press can do will help you sell a guide to pronouns. Nothing. Oni can't do anything to sell that to your people. But they know there's a market for that book. Maybe you're not the market. And that's okay. The thing is, what DC's learned and what Marvel learned and what everybody's learned is if they publish something and they don't offer it to comic shops, the comic shops lose their minds. So, okay, we're publishing this that's going to be sold here. We're offering it to you. And then you get retailers that are like, oh, I don't know why Marvel's publishing this book. Nobody reads it. Nobody likes it. No, your customers don't like it, and your customers don't read it. It's okay just to buy for the subscribers. And here's the thing. If a subscriber drops a book and you say you're stuck with the issues, first off, when a subscriber drops a book that's subscription only, you change that FOC. You as a retailer need to be on top of that if this is something where you're losing money. Okay, this $9.99 book, I have 12 subscribers, 1 subscriber dropped it. All right, I'm going to go in, my final order cutoff, I'm going to drop that. The second is, if you know that somebody in your store might be interested, try and sell it to them. Otherwise, why aren't you using Amazon and eBay to sell these books?
Or going to a Comic-Con and blowing them out and
right,
get some money back.
But you could create an Amazon affiliate account, put that book up there. There you go.
You could have a clearance section in the store and just pop it in there. There were times I used to do that with mostly special items, like how the hell am I going to sell this? Well, let's see. It's a $200 statue. I own it at $125. Let's sell it for $140.
Yeah.
Or mark it off as a promo item, or let it just get swallowed up in your cost of goods sold and make a contest out of it or something. I don't know. There's always something you can do. I mean, I can talk this way because I only had a single store to work with. Over 8 stores, it might be a little tougher. And maybe you can account to this because, Cory, you worked at Schindler's, but how often were you worried about just your store? How much did you hear about what was going on through the whole chain?
We always heard what was going on throughout the chain. I always had the best comic sales because I was the one, I knew my market and I knew what would sell. And I would always say, I need more of this. This isn't selling here. The home office would make all the orders and they would allow me input, and sometimes they'd listen and sometimes they wouldn't. So the early, the proto Vertigo books, I was always out of them. Always. And they would go, well, they don't sell. Well, you sent me 12 copies and they were gone by noon. Well, up at the Crystal store, they don't sell, and here. Well, then give them to me, because I guess I'm selling them and other stores aren't. Move your stock around. And again, he's got a subscription service. If you're stuck with onesie-twosies, that's your con stock. That's your putting it up on Amazon. That's your putting it up on eBay. How many times when Dan's on the show, he's like, okay, the comic shop pulled issues 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They didn't pull issue 3. Well, you could go out on Amazon and buy it from somebody out there, or you can buy it from eBay. That's what those services are for. Put up your slow-moving stock. Put up your stuff that you ordered that your customers don't want. There are ways to move this stuff. And if you've got 8 stores, you've obviously got people who have time. Because on a Tuesday, it's dead. Joe? This is going to be an extra long episode, isn't it?
I think the next ones I think we're not going to have too much arguing about, because I've already talked about books without a market. Order with hot comics, I could put 1 on the shelf. the only book I can recall that I never recall selling a copy off the newsstand was Cerebus.
Yeah.
But I had like 15 people that ordered it. I figured I could afford to leave one on the shelf, and then when the cons came around, I blew them out for $1.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that line paid for itself. I didn't worry about it. And I talked in the way past about I always would buy these Western comics. I believe it was it AC or AGC?
Yeah, American Comics Group.
And never sold them, but then once every quarter or so, one guy would come in and buy them all. He never wanted me to order them for him. He never wanted to pre-commit to them, but he just said, "You're the only store that carries them. I'm just going to stop in when I can and pick them up." And I knew that, and I didn't mind them sitting there. And he didn't care if he missed one or nothing. He just liked them. So, yeah, and with Crazy Comics, if I didn't have a subscriber, I wasn't personally going to push it. Or I had someone like you, like with Walking Dead, where you said, "Buy this, you won't regret it." Don't order it. Or just, I don't, like you said, the sales data will show. Eventually, there were titles, and what I did, Marvel DC, I'd go on a 4-week cycle and then pull it or bury it with the next issue. Independents, I eventually went out to a 2-month cycle because I discovered that various independents would sell slower. They would sell like on a slow week with Marvel DC, or they'd sell when somebody saw number 2 came out and then they noticed number 1 underneath.
Yeah.
So, but number 3 is something we've talked about: rushed and inconsistent scheduling. Something that killed Crazy Comics. Publisher had delays, so we don't see a title for 2 months, then we see 3 issues in 5 weeks. I don't see this as much anymore because we order month to month through Discount Comic Book Service. I don't know if that happens a lot. I haven't heard of it happening other than like in miniseries. But yeah, it can be a real killer.
And this is what one of the ones where I said he's right, and the publisher's got to change things.
And he just wrote, "If you're late, suck it up. Don't make us retailers pay for your problems." I think Deathmate was the big thing that broke the logjam on that, because it used to be, was it 6 months they had to ship the book?
Yeah.
And then it cut back to 90, and then it cut back to 60, and then I think Brian Hibbs had to sue Marvel to get them to live up to the 30-day late thing. And, to me, that what pushes me even more is, I was all excited because Neil Adams was doing a book called The Villain, 5-issue miniseries. Number 1 came out months after month after month. No, they finally canceled 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
It's like, really? Well, now I'm kind of stuck with number 1, assuming there were any number 1s left on the shelf. I probably wouldn't have put too many on the shelf, although I would have probably mentioned the book and the title to fans that I think would like Neil Adams. And this ties into the big one, number 8.
Well, I've got a couple things to say about 7.
Okay.
About the rushed and inconsistent scheduling. Again, I agree with him on this. And the problem is that comics now are creator-driven. You can't just take Justice League, who people are, it's by Scott Snyder and Ivan Velez, and they're late. Here's a fill-in issue by Bill Mantlo and Sal Buscema. You could do that in the 70s and the 80s and even into the 90s, but now you can't. Partly because they're so creator-driven and partly because the creators are doing a series. So what the publishers have to do is quit hiring editors who are pals with everybody. The editor's job is to make sure the book comes out on time. That's the editor's job. And I have read stories by, again, Mark Evanier, who said that there was one time when he was doing editing for Gold Key on the Warner Brothers books. And he had an artist who was given the assignment and wasn't turning in pages and wasn't turning in pages and wasn't turning in pages. And he went to the artist's house and said, "Give me what you have and I'll have someone else finish it." I'm not saying that we need that, but we do need editors who will go, "All right, you're late. Someone else, give us what you have, and we'll have someone else finish the book, and you can start on the next one. Those deadline dates by the editors have to be more professional. And the other thing is that the editors, if they need to put rules in place for missing deadlines. And this is, yep, I miss deadlines on my podcast, and I feel terrible about it, but I'm not making money on that podcast yet. When I'm at my job, if I miss a deadline, oh man, I hear about it. I will get called on the carpet for it. I might get written up if it's a deadline that's strong enough. And if I miss enough deadlines, I'm not going to have a job anymore. And it's got to be the same way in comics. Dude, like Jim Lee. If I were an editor and Jim Lee said, oh, I'm going to draw this series, first off, as an editor, I would go, well, I'm not going to commit to publishing to soliciting this till I have 6 issues in the can and you're only drawing 8 issues, because I know that you're a VP, and while you may have time right now, you may not have time in 2 weeks.
We talked about it too with Image's line, because and Saga, I'm looking at you, they're taking a year off or something.
However, they're letting us know ahead of time. They're saying, all right.
I don't know. Yeah. And again, for the Saga fans, they probably don't care, but if I don't know how a retailer is going to order the next issue when you have a whole year between issues. It's just.
But the good thing about it is they didn't just stop. They didn't just up. We don't know when the next issue's coming out.
Yeah.
They announced 4 months ahead of time, hey, when this story ends, we're taking a larger break than normal.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with Brian Hibbs on this. I don't think you can do it because you're a creator and it's your book, but I don't think it's a good idea. I think you should you're almost to the end, just get her done. Especially a year like that.
It depends on the book. It depends on the fandom. It depends on on what's going on. I always point to Jeff Smith for Bone. Jeff Smith had to take time off to work on the deal with Nickelodeon. And he said 6 months out, hey, once I think it was issue 40, either 39 or 40 comes out, I have to take a break. And then when he came back, he did a whole publicity thing. Hey, the book is coming back. Now, it's one thing if you take a break in the middle of a story, then you're an idiot and your book's not going to sell. Second thing is, if you take a break and when it comes back, you just, well, here it is. Here you go.
But you have an advantage nowadays because you've got social media that you can push everything. Back when I had the store, if a book disappeared, I had a whole thick 3-ring binder of titles that just disappeared, and we had no idea. Were they in hiatus? Were they canceled? Were they broke? There are still websites out there where you can look up and find out. These are series that were announced or 1 or 2 issues came out and we've never heard from again.
Yep.
And nobody knows.
And the other thing about rush scheduling, could not agree more. With Frank Miller's next, he's doing another Dark Knight book. If I were DC, I would not announce that you're doing it until you've got the first pages of the art of the last issue. I'm sorry, but he's shown that he starts with a lot of enthusiasm, but as you get closer and closer to the end, it becomes more of a grind and he has trouble finishing. You've got to take that into account, especially when it's a well-known creator that you're going to be building an entire campaign around. There was some Jim Lee Batman book where Jim Lee was working with a European artist, and they put it on the cover of previews, and they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. Well, guess what? It was late, it was canceled. And when it eventually came out, no one cared. Why? Because they'd done all the publicity a year before it came out. You've got, and we'll talk about it next month when we talk about previews, but we've got all these ways for you to reach fans. If you're going to take a break, you've got to treat coming back as a whole new first issue and do all that publicity. That's what you have to do for the fans, for the publisher, and for the retailer. And Joe, the last one.
And I think a lot of this will tie up with what he thinks is the problem. Promo items. Phil goes on to say, I love nice promo items. Customers love them to some degree, but even the nicest postcard is often found in the trash can right outside the store. Customers are overwhelmed with advertisements. Some look for those that target them and react. Problem is, publishers have a broad brush promotional item, then want to sell it to us. And I always thought this was funny because even when I had Crazy Comics, I bought all the promotion items that I had. I'd get this big pack once a month from Diamond that had posters and maybe some cards. But if I wanted something to give away, like Comic Shop News or something, I had to buy it. And I don't know. Like I'm looking right now, I got a calendar that Marvel sent out as a giveaway that will promote various books and events and things throughout the year. Every so often we get, there's one down in my box of things, Star Wars reads that came out from Marvel that talks about all the Star Wars books in the series and things like that. I have no idea if retailers buy these things or if Marvel just sends them a sack and say, give them away. I don't know if they buy the little cards that say, here's a checklist for Secret Wars or Final Wars or Final Crisis or whatever. I find them useful because, then I can check it out. Sometimes it gets you excited for something. I would like, to me, the most effective promo items would be posters. If you can get me a mobile or like something out of the ordinary, and I wouldn't even mind buying it, but feels like, nope, not paying for your promotions. And I remember at the time we were reading a magazine dealing with the video industry and how the big controversy there was the studios wanted the video stores to buy promotional items. Now, if you remember back, and again, some of you don't, in the 80s, we're talking like you had a VCR tape and they would send you an oversized box that would promote whatever the title was, or maybe a balloon that you could blow up or things like that. So I'm not even sure what type of promotional items they have that he's paying for, or that they give an option to pay for. He's anti-pay for it, and I guess I'm curious if it's something interesting or not. And again, when I had my stores, I paid for them, so to me it was like, I mean, I didn't buy all of them, but and even for us, we bemoan the fact that number one promo item in our industry is previews. Do you have any take on promo items?
My thing is that what he says, this point cannot be stressed enough. But I come at it from a different way. Comic sales started shooting up in the late 80s and early 90s because of co-op. Period. Full stop. I can't tell you how many people started buying comics because of the ads on TV for G.I. Joe comics. And Joe, you're probably the same way. How many people do you know who, when you mention G.I. Joe, oh, that was the first comic I bought. I saw the ads on the G.I. Joe cartoon. Or I saw this or I saw that. Or the X-Men and Batman cartoons where comic shops were buying ads. I just read one comic shop who's been around for a long time who said that they used their co-op to buy a billboard by the freeway in '89. We are your Batman headquarters. Batman t-shirts, Batman graphic novels, Batman this. And he said he counted, I think it was like $15,000 for the ad, and they sold over $200,000 worth of Batman shirts.
That's funny because I just found the slide for Batman Returns that we ran for Hot Comics at the theater that was just north of us. I've been trying to get a picture of this for years so I could post it to share with people. But yeah, this was a co-op thing. Matter of fact, if you go to my Facebook page and you look under my photos and find the album on Hot Comics, you'll see a number of ads that were co-op. One of the big ones was one that was in all the newspapers where they listed every single store, including a lot of the Shinder stores, talking about Marvel comics, and Ren and Stimpy was going to be a new comic, and they had radio ads, they had TV ads, and they're really promoting it.
And that's the thing.
I
I've
don't
seen a
know.
couple DC ads on Adult Swim. Why Marvel and DC are not buying ads on Adult Swim, and again, providing ads for shops to put out. That one ad that DC had that ended with Lobo saying, "It ain't your daddy's comics, fanboy." There aren't any ads. You can't go to Marvel and DC and say, "Hey, I'd like to use your I'd like a TV ad that I can run," because now with targeted cable, I mean, you can literally say, "I want men age 18 to 34. I want to be on their top 4 shows." And boom, 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 and you can say, "I want it in this neighborhood, and this neighborhood, and this neighborhood." That's how good the marketing is with your cable company now. Why Marvel didn't buy an ad for Uncanny X-Men #1 and put it on wrestling or some action adventure shows or on Adult Swim or things like that is beyond me. There are simple things you can do too. You got a big crossover? Give the shelf talkers things that they drop on to say, "Hey, this is a tie-in." They used to do that all the time, and it was great. It helped me as a consumer. It helped you as a retailer. It helped the company, which had sunk a lot of money into this crossover.
You know, the other one that drives me crazy is every so often you'll see from Marvel or DC a bunch of one-shots that are basically kind of a preview for an upcoming series that tie into other things, but they put like a $5 price tag on it. Put a $1 price tag on it, and I'd buy it. Again, I'm a print guy, so I think of Marvel Age and things like that. But I'm sure there's got to be some online stuff. I mean, I'm on DC, I'm on Marvel on Facebook. I never see posts for those guys.
Marvel's got a podcast that does really well at hyping stuff. It's overlong because, okay, here's what's coming out on TV, here's the movie stuff, here's the video game stuff, and here's the comics. And the problem is that podcast is almost as long as ours, which this one's going to be an extra long episode because we got a lot to talk about in this.
Well, it's the beginning of the year. You deserve an extra long episode.
But, Marvel and DC need to be promoting this stuff better. We're going to talk next week about previews and how previews is just a goddamn mess. But Marvel and DC, you've got these huge corporate sponsors behind you. Don't tell me that Disney and Warner Brothers can't produce decent TV ads for you to give to comic shops to run in their local market. Because they can do that with their pocket change.
Yeah, but that's the other thing too, is we don't know how big the publishing arms are in these giant corporations. They might be just a pimple, and their only reason they exist is because A, they're making money, and B, well, that's where we get our ideas from.
Yeah,
hey, Marvel, what do you got? We can make a movie out of and make billions of dollars versus, oh yeah, well, the Avenger comics barely selling 100,000. So, again, these guys may be living in mortal fear, which is why we're seeing Disney do what Disney does. Hey, why is IDW doing a kids comic? Why did they license out this property to do a comic book to these guys, Well, because they can. Because Marvel probably just exists in their own little superhero universe. They're not going to do Disney comics. They're not going to do kids Star Wars Marvel comics. Are going to license them out because anytime you license, that means it's money in. I don't see co-op coming back because of that. It's just too small of a bump. It's like newsstand. We could talk about it. Why don't they put them on newsstands? Too small of a market because, well, just think of places you could stick a newsstand. Walmart, Target, Snyder's, Walgreens, Costco.
Hey, Joe?
I don't even want to go there. I don't want to go there because we've had this talk in the past, and I will agree with you. I'm just saying it's too small of a market for the returns. So that's why when you have big, giant Disney, AT&T, Warner, they're not going to give a little tiny division, no matter how much you and I love comic books, they're not going to give this little tiny division a lot of money to promote themselves. They're not
I
going
can see
to kill
that.
them because they're making profit, but they're not going. And again, they may get to the point where they could eventually do like Ron Perlman did with Marvel. Okay, we're taking all the ideas in other words, the actual copyright trademarks and putting it in a corporation separate from the publishing. And we can shut down the publishing, but we still have Spider-Man, Avengers, X-Men, blah, blah, blah. And of course, his whole problem was it was all still under the Ron Perlman umbrella, and it all got taken away from him, thank God. So, again, we could see in the future, you know what, there's no Marvel DC, but they're licensing out their books to other people.
And the other thing that these comic shops need to remember, pay attention to what the publishers are doing. For the last 30 years, comic shops are driving the bus. Well, you're not going to be driving the bus much longer. Marvel and DC are looking outside the comic book market because, and this is going to sound harsh, but I'm thinking corporate because I work corporate. I've been working corporate most of my adult life. Well, sales in the comic market is going down. We're not able to squeeze as much money out of that orange. We're not able to squeeze as much juice out of that orange anymore. Where are other markets? Oh, look, there's an overseas market. There's a huge market overseas we haven't tapped. Look at this young adult market that Doubleday and other publishers are getting into. Well, we publish comics. We should be part of that market. Look at Scholastic Books. That's where our growth is. I guess we're going to move further into that market. You as a comic shop, because your market is shrinking for whatever reason, because your market is shrinking, when you're a shrinking market, they're going to pay less and less attention to you. They're going to move to where the growth is. Because if you work in a corporation, let me tell you the law of the corporation. There must be more money next quarter than this quarter. Because if there's not more money next quarter than this quarter, someone is getting fired.
Don't have to worry about us because we'll be here every quarter. And you know why?
Because of these guys, our sponsors.
The Solitaire Rose Podcast Network has ads, and our ads are, first, for the best web host in the whole known universe, go to dreamhost.com. Dreamhost.com is the best bar-none web host in the whole known universe, and we have been using it since 1999, so we're old. But also, if you need a web host, just head on over and use the code KRAYZ and get $20 off your first year. And when you're at work or you're at home, do you really want to eat those unhealthy snacks? Another bag of chips from the vending machine? No, you want to go over to Graze.com and get healthy snacks sent to you automatically with a subscription, or you can order whatever snacks you like. Just go to Graze.com. Your first and fifth box are free if you use the code CORYS3R5P. That's CORYS3R5P. Free snacks, healthy snacks, and the best way to keep away from the vending machine. If you would like to advertise on Crazy Comics and Stories or any of the other podcasts, you can just send an email to solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, subject advertising. Thanks.
This is an extra long episode, so Joe, why don't you tell me about your favorite part of the show? No, not where you learn how to work a butterfly knife. What's going on the eBays?
I got 3 things to tell you. I'm selling stuff, I'm adding stuff, and I'm still not getting paid for my regular job. So as a well-loved listener of this here podcast, if you go on there and you see something you like, make me an offer. Or just if you buy it now and you say, hey, I listen to the show, I'll probably reach over and put something extra special in there. I used to offer free shipping, but I'm pretty much not shipping to free on everything anyways. So not a lot of action. We're in a brief pause, so I'm not going to blather on and on. But check it out, KRAYZ. And like I said, I'm trying to get new stuff in because I got oodles of stuff in the basement to sell. if I don't, my wife will throw it out. So, anyways,
Okay, there's that. You know what I'm doing to keep busy, Joe?
doing
Other than
terrible
working.
things to a dog with a fork.
No, I don't have any forks.
Oh.
I do this stuff. The Solitaire Rose Podcast Network is filled with all kinds of audio goodness. First, there's Crazy Comics and Stories. It's been going since 2010. It drops every Monday, and it has me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, and Joe Crazy Writer talking comics, shenanigans, and whatever we're freaking and geeking about. Every Monday morning. It's been going since 2010, and it's available at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. Also on that same feed is the Solitaire Rose Podcast, which is me, again, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, doing interviews, talking about comics history, pretty much talking about whatever I want to talk about. We've also got Solo Joe, where Joe Crazy Writer does a solo podcast, and he hasn't done one in a while, so kick him in the shins to get him started. We also, on that same feed, have Solitaire Rose Series and Review, where we do DVD commentary of older comic book series. That's all at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. I also do a podcast with Wolfie B. Bad at badadvice.solitairerose.com, where we take listener questions and give them bad advice. There's also Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's at novels.solitairerose.com. There's also Fantastic Forecast, where myself and Adam Vermillion are going through the entire run of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time. That's fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com. And if you think that I'm on all of these podcasts, you're wrong, because Scrabbling Across the West is at scrabbling.solitairerose.com, where musician Dave Cofell and his wife Stephanie travel across America and then sitting down to play Scrabble and talk about the day. That's at Scrabbling Across the West, scrabbling.solitairerose.com. There are always more podcasts at the Solitaire Rose Podcast Network. Be there. Aloha. And now we get to my favorite part of the show. No.
It doesn't matter how long the podcast will go, we will always do Cory's favorite part of the show.
Yes. Now we get to my favorite part of the show. No, not where I talk about how I got the Criterion disc of David Lynch, not David Lynch, oh God, what's his name? David Byrne's movie True Stories.
Brenner.
No. David Byrne's True Stories. Talking Heads, right before they all broke up.
Aww.
No, it's Freaking and Geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on?
Well, Cory, being the rat bastard he is, had to say, look, I got my box today. I'm still waiting for mine. They just shipped it. So I'm a little verklempt about that. You know, I know they were having it. Well, we're going to ship everything late because of this, that, and the other thing. But I want my box. I want my box day books. The other thing I'm freaking on, and this is kind of more of a kick in the teeth, we've been talking a lot about celebrities dying. Well, a good friend at work passed away while I am on LWAP. It was kind of a shock because a friend emailed me instant messaged me on Facebook and said, hey, did you hear about this guy? Did he pass away? And I go, I don't know. And I sent a couple feelers on. They came back. Yeah, he was 44. He was found dead in his apartment. It's a guy I've worked with since the beginning of the whole roller coaster TSA. He was in my class. Very quiet guy, very unassuming. He read comics, so I was always talk to him about comics, and he would always point out things. Matter of fact, I bought a couple graphic novels from him. He said he bought a big graphic novel set, and he sold me a few, and I'll probably get to read them eventually. But my friend's name, Joe Schwedes, I'm sick that he's gone, and it just, we talk a lot about reaching out and saying hi to people you haven't talked to, and what was I going to do? I'm on leave because of my hip. It just kind of freaks me out that I'll never see him again, never get to talk with him, or like I say, he's a good worker. I enjoyed working with him, and I'm going to miss him. And I know all my friends at Minneapolis Airport are grieving because of his death. How about you, Mr. Strode? What are you freaking on?
Joe, gather round. Gather round, it's
Okay.
story time.
Let me get close here. Is this too close?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back off just a little. Sorry.
It's time for Hanging at the Home.
Oh, all right. Hang on. I gotta sit back. I got my drink. Take my pants off. Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so I'm doing the sleep shifts, and we've got some new staff who, they don't quite know what they're doing. They don't have a lot of experience. So I come in one night, and down on the women's side of the cottage I usually sleep in, there's one who is pretty set in her ways, and what it is, it's, when it's time to go to bed, she'll turn on the light in her room, and she'll get stuff, and then she'll go to the bathroom, and then she'll come back, and she'll do stuff in her room. And it's okay. You could do stuff in your room, and you can have the light on in your room. Basically, bedtime is, leave the common area, go to your room, and she's got her routine. She goes to the bathroom. Then she comes back, and she turns on, and she watches the news until the weather's done. Well, across the hall from her is a newer resident who just moved in from one of the other cottages, and in the other cottage she would always shut her door at night. Well, because it's all new people, and she needs to know what's going on, she wants the door to her room open. And she moved her bed so that when she lays down, she's looking out her door, basically to watch over people. And every night, when this client who turns her light on, the client in her bed, who has moved her bed and lays so that the light from the room is shining in her eye, gets mad and is like, it's bedtime, turn out the light, please turn out the light, I'm trying to sleep. Now, we've told her that she can move her bed so that the light isn't in her eyes, or she can roll over and face the other way so the light's not in her eyes. But oh no, she can't do that for some reason. We also said that she could shut her door like she used to do. Oh no, she can't do that for some reason. So Thursday night, I come in, everybody's in bed, I lay down on the couch, I'm settled in, I'm reading so that I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and all of a sudden, I just don't hear, turn out the light. I hear blood-curdling screeches. So loud that the clients at the other end of the building are awoken by this. And the staff who's the overnight, the awake overnight staff, nowhere to be seen. No idea where he is or what he's doing. I go down and I'm like, what's wrong? She won't turn her light off. Well, she could have the light on in her room. No, she can't. She's got to turn it off. And screaming this at the top of her lungs. And, I try a number of things to calm her down. Then I go, okay, here are your options. We can move your bed. No! You can turn over and face the wall so that the light's not in your eyes. No! Or we can shut the door. No! All right, those are three options. You need to let me know because you can't keep screaming like this. You're waking everybody up. No! The light needs to be turned off! No! The light needs to be turned off! Ah! All right, I'm gonna make a decision if you won't to turn off your light, to shut your door. No, you can't shut my door. I need to have my door open. Then tell me what you're gonna do. Yeah, she needs to turn out her light. So I shut the door. The screaming continues for a minute and a half, and then silence. At this point, the awake staff comes out of the laundry room and says, "What's going on? Do you need help?" Well, I needed help 10 minutes ago, but now, no, everything's solved. I don't see him on the schedule anymore. I don't think he was ready for the job. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Oh, there's a bunch of stuff coming up I'm geeking on. And I mean, that doesn't even include the MSP SpringCon 2019. That'll be May 18th and 19th at the State Fair Minnesota Grandstand. And of course, they'll have advance tickets on sale April 15th at the MCBA ComicCons.com. There's a start of the website as the crew slowly wakes up from their olden sleep from FalCon. And, it's just something you can plan on now because there'll be over 100,000 square feet of comic book mayhem. I'll be there with the charity booth with my family. They'll have free grab bags, all sorts of fun stuff. And I'm going to try to slip over to the source on Friday, where one of I always meet up with one of the 3 guys that are running the place, see if I can't get any special tidbits for us that we can pass on. Before that, though, there is Sub-Zero Comic-Con, presented by Most Wanted Comics, which will be in Richfield at the American Legion, real close to where Hot Comics Richfield is. That's on Saturday the 19th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., free admission, located at the Minnesota American Legion, 6501 on Portland Avenue. Google it, you can find it. And I've been there before. That's a real fun, real cool dealer show. Depending on how business goes, if you get there first, you get some good stuff. Or if it's a bad show, you get there and guys are desperate to sell stuff. So as a fan, it's actually pretty cool. Way in the future,
hope that the show sucks so you can get deals.
Yeah, then you get good stuff. Way in the future, November 8th and 10th, even past FallCon, will be GalaxyCon Minneapolis. This is a national group that's coming in to do a show. It sounds very exciting. It'll be at the Minneapolis Convention Center. They've got a deal, 25% off tickets now through Thursday, January 31st. If you go to minneapolis.galaxycon.com or Google it or look on Facebook, GalaxyCon Minneapolis. So far, 2 of the guests they've announced William Shatner's coming. And, of course, he's probably going to be expensive, but they have a win meet and greet with him. So if you go to minneapolis.galaxycon.com, you can enter. You give them your email, you like their Facebook, you do 3 other things. You get 5 chances to win, which are kind of cool. The other one that I'm kind of interested in, Keith Giffen.
Yes, I saw that.
Located to go. Yeah. And, of course, he's the writer and artist for Justice League, Legion of Superheroes, Annihilation, creator of Ambush Bug. Of course, things are scheduled to change, so as they're way far off. We're not quite sure what will happen, but this is one I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. And who knows? Maybe I'll schedule my hip to be replaced then, so I can go to it. I don't know. Locally, though, I was Terrence Greep, professional pro wrestler and comic book writer. He posted on his Facebook page from the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame presents Wrestling with the Arts at the Robin Gallery, which is in 4915 42nd Avenue North in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. It's already open and it runs through January 26th. And it's got different artists obviously posting the pictures. Terrence has pictures of him on his Facebook page next to some of the artwork that they've done of him. And it actually looks pretty kind of cool because they just have all sorts of different artists, local people. They're on, I guess on the 26th, there's a talk from Arthur historian George Shire. So if you like Minnesota wrestling, if you like art, this would be the place to go down at the Robin Gallery in Robbinsdale. So I definitely recommend that. That should be kind of fun. We talked a lot about, these are like the 3rd podcast in a week and a half, so I haven't actually got to read a lot. The only thing I actually caught, other than I'm watching old Deep Space Nine episodes, and I'm really enjoying it because for those of you who watch series, any television series, anytime they have an episode where they do something different, like they're a timepiece or their characters are changed or they're doing like a fantasy thing. The actors always enjoy it because it allows them to kind of stretch their legs and just have some fun. And I think I'm having more fun as I'm going through the Star Treks with that. And a good example is in Deep Space Nine Season 5. The 4th episode in is called North to the Battle to the Strong, where Jake Sisko is thrust upon a war zone, and he's not Starfleet. He's not trained Starfleet. And he, when faced upon an actual battlefield where people are dying and bleeding and the enemies are there, you know what he does, Cory?
freaks out and hides.
He does. He runs, and he's ashamed of it. And it's just an amazing show. It shows the breadth of the actor, and what he can do. What's even fun though is that the very next episode called The Assignment, and there's if I can find the actress's name, she plays Chief O'Brien's wife. Oh, Rosalind Chow. Or Chow? Sorry, Rosalind. She gets to play an evil being that has established her body, and part of the thing that the being does to torture O'Brien is he acts like his wife, she acts like his wife, and then on a dime turns evil. And of course, one of the big things is there's a birthday party for O'Brien, and O'Brien's having a tough time dealing with the fact that his wife's possessed and this being wants him to do something, but we'll talk about it later, and I'll tell you something later, and he just wants his wife free. He watches as his wife / possessed being is combing his daughter's hair. They call this in Star Trek the screw with O'Brien episode because they're he's kind of the everyman guy, and we always see it through him. And just a chilling episode. Awesome acting by Cole Meany, who plays O'Brien, and of course Rosalind, who plays Keiko. And I think. I've bitched about Star Trek before, they do this, they do that, but I'm getting more appreciation for this because as they go on, you get to see these episodes, and definitely in Deep Space Nine, because they were going places that Star Trek never went before. I mean, showing the actual battlefield, most of the time fights in Star Trek are real, what's the word, clean. Oh, yes. The ship died with 500 people. Well, here you got the guy who's going to die in front of Jake Sisko's hand, or he's in the middle of a battlefield, falls into a foxhole from running like crazy, and here's a guy who is dying in front of him. And there's more to come because I'm only in season 5, and it's going to get darker and crazier. And I think that's why I like it, and even things on like Babylon 5, who definitely went a lot darker and a lot crazier. On the lighter side of things, though, I did watch one of my recorded things. I watched PBS American Experiences Bob Hope. American Experiences is just something where they take a usually 2-hour block of time and they cover a various topic. This one happened to be Bob Hope. Regardless of what you think of him, he was really freaking funny. I mean, they basically cut up little things of him from being on vaudeville and when he did his Road to series with Bing Cosby and even up through his visits to Vietnam. And he did 3 things that were groundbreaking that even to this day you can see when you watch things like Colbert or Jon Stewart or Noah or whoever. He did a lot of topical comedy in his act. Most of the time, guys didn't do that. They stayed away from it. But he would always, dig in. Never super mean, but he would always refer to what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, what FDR or what LBJ did. And now, of course, it's almost unheard of to not have a comedian in his opening monologue talk politics or topical events. The second thing he did is he pioneered kind of the TV special. When TV first came out, he was one of the first radio stars. I mean, he went from vaudeville, where he learned all his comedic timing, to radio, to television. But he didn't do a regular series. A lot of times, a lot of these radio guys, like Sid Caesar,
Jack Benny,
and I'm trying to think of Milton
Berle.
Yeah, they did their series. They were 2 seasons. They kind of flared, and then the star, they kind of disappeared. Bob Hope did yearly specials, and maybe, I don't know if it was yearly or quarterly or whatever, but he wasn't on week to week. So when he showed up, it was a major deal. He did his specials all the way into the 70s, maybe into the 80s. I'd have to look up, see when his last special was. And he kind of led the field for what we would think of as, and I don't think they do it that often anymore. Definitely not on primetime or over-air television. But, we're doing a special of this person, or this group's doing a special, or a Christmas special here. He was always big on that, and he always had the stars and things like that. One thing they don't shy away from Bob, his dark side. I mean, he was a like pretty much every star of the 30s, 40s. He was a hound dog. He slept with his leading ladies. Yet he was married. Was it 56 years? 68 years,
Yeah.
I think it was. The longest of anybody. And it was basically his wife turned the other cheek, more or less, and said, we're going to keep our family together because of this. But early on, when Bob went to the USO shows in World War II, he realized he was entertaining these young men and women, and that it's quite possible that these kids were not going to come home. And they may be just laughing for maybe their last time. And that deeply, deeply affected him to the point where he is the king of USO shows. And he never, I think he went all the way up through the first Iraq War. Even in Vietnam, when he started to get a little bit criticized because, Vietnam wasn't a popular war, but he went there because he felt he had to for the kids he was entertaining, for the troops. If one thing came out of Vietnam, it's the idea, and it escapes us today. You can support the troops while not supporting the war or the actions of the political realm. Bob didn't realize that. He could not realize why people would be against the Vietnam War and these kids that he was entertaining in front of him, realizing that a lot of these kids probably would not live to come home. And, again, some see it, some don't now, but Bob, there's stories of him, and I didn't even realize it until I watched there, how close he came to being killed multiple times in World War II. Because he was the type of guy who'd say, okay, we just did a show. Well, he'd hear about this battalion that couldn't make it. Where were they? Well, they're 50 miles closer to the Nazis. Let's jump in a Jeep and go. And when Bob wanted to go, he got to go. You didn't say no to him. They'd all jump in, they'd go forward, and he'd go and give a promptu speech to these guys, or an act to these guys, right on enemy lines. And I have more admiration for him. I mean, I always thought he was funny. I mean, I know as time went on, and, they always spoof him that he had to read, cue cards. I gotta tell you, but just to know more about the man, I mean, it's too bad we didn't have advanced Star Trek techniques. We could keep hope alive. No, I didn't go all that way just for a pun. It was a very good series. So if you see it on PBS and you get a chance to record it, check it out. Besides Kermit the Frog's in it, what else could be better? Cory, what are you geeking on?
Well, to piggyback on the Bob Hope thing, you mentioned the three things about him. There's a fourth that he always gave credit to his writers. He was not one of these guys who had writers and then would go, oh yeah, these are all my jokes. He gave credit to his writers. He paid them really well.
Yeah, there were a lot of writers on this special. Then they talked about that too.
And he paid them well because he said, without them, I don't have an act. And, most comedians who use writers never talk about it. He was open about it. There are a lot of things about Bob Hope that as more and more come out, the more I'm just...
He was human.
Yeah, there were things about him that were kind of skeevy, but the fact that
he was Bob Hope 24/7. That was It was his act. He bought into the character. Whether it was him or not, nobody will ever know. There's some I can't think of the David the interviewer. Got a few times where it looked like Bob was dropping his goal, but Bob was Bob whenever he was Bob.
And if you want to know what it was like to work with him, read the Johnny Carson book by his lawyer, Bushkin. That was the one where I really started to go, oh, wow. And, the other thing was that Johnny Carson, he had a lot of demons in his past, too. But the fact that both of them knew where their bread was buttered and paid the writers, that's one of the things, when people bring up Red Skelton, the way he treated his writers, I can't watch his stuff anymore because he was just horrible to them. I mean, these were the guys, and he would keep them writing long into the night and wake them up early in the morning and fire them without warning. And just, it's one of the reasons why when his TV series got canceled, he had so much trouble getting another one, even though his ratings were high. No one wanted to work with him. Bob Hope, there were times he was pretty hard to work with too, but he knew where the money was, and the money was making sure he had good jokes. I read some number one issues that I want to bring up. First one is a comic from Image called Die. It is by Karen Gillan, who did The Wicked and the Divine, and this is a story where a bunch of teenagers get together to play Dungeons and Dragons, and they're gone for 2 years. When they come back, one of them is missing. Then 20 years later, something happens where they have to get back together and deal with it. And the first issue is all set up, but coming out of it, it's like, oh, this is such a cool idea. The characters are interesting. The setup sounds pretty simple, but he starts turning everything at right angles. And when I first heard about it, you and I both talked about how we were interested in it. Now that the first issue's out, it's like, whoa, that's cool. Marvel has a Killmonger miniseries out. I read the first issue, and I'm not sure. Because it's supposedly set in Marvel continuity, but they draw Killmonger like he's in the movie. He talks like he did in the movie. It's not the Don McGregor Killmonger. It's the movie Killmonger, which I completely understand. But the story itself was kind of... For a first issue, it didn't hook me. I like the character enough that I'm going to read more. But on the old buy, borrow, or ignore, this is a borrow, whereas die is a buy. I also read the Marvel Avengers Untitled Preview, Prelude. Now, Marvel does these where it's, okay, here's what happens before the movie begins. And I picked this one up. And, Joe, did you see Avengers Infinity War?
I'm insulted that you even asked. I saw it with you.
This is an adaptation of that.
Oh.
It's not a prelude to the new Avengers movie. It's just an adaptation of Infinity War.
Fake? Does it have a photo cover?
Yeah, but it's not a photo. It's a photo cover of the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh.
So I felt very disappointed by this. So that's an ignore. DC, I like their one-shot specials, and they have the DC Comics Nuclear Winter Special. It's an 80-page giant. It's a bunch of short stories with different heroes by different creative teams. But what I like about it is the story starts with Rip Hunter has landed in a future after the Great Disaster. And there are people wanting to eat him, so he tells them stories about the heroes after the Great Disaster to sort of distract them. You know, it's the old Alibaba and the 40 Thieves thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to tell you these stories to distract you so you don't eat me. And, you know, for a one-shot that has a bunch of short stories in it, I thought all of them were well done. There were a couple where I thought the ending was kind of, you kind of screwed the pooch on the ending. But overall, I like the one-shots with a bunch of short stories in it, just because it's okay, get a good idea of what these artists and writers are like, and they all had a theme of, this is what it's like after the Great Disaster. So that one is a buy. And the last number one that I read, I'm not a big Top Cow guy. Because Mark Silvestri's art, I didn't like it back in the 80s and the 90s. It's not my style of art. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's not my style of art. So I've kind of always kind of ignored Top Cow. But they've got a new series out called The Freeze. And the premise of the book is, there is an office IT guy who, while he's fixing a computer, he gets shocked And when he gets shocked, every human being on the planet gets stuck, frozen. Not ice frozen, they're not moving. Time is not moving for them. But time is moving for everything else. So, planes are crashing because the pilots are frozen. They're not moving. They're not doing anything. Cars are crashing because the driver, etc., etc. And as far as we can tell, this is all over the world. And anyone he touches is unfrozen. That's the premise of the book. And of course, the first thing you would think, Joe, is how does he solve the problem?
Touch yourself.
He goes around and touches people. However, who would you touch? Who do you want to unfreeze? Who would you use to help solve this problem? Rather than just, he goes around and touches people and unfreezes everybody. No, he's got to be judicious about it. And this book sets up the dilemma, sets the rules of the story, and gives some really cool examples of why this is a horrifying thing. So, I am excited about this book. From the preview, I wasn't all that excited, but I read the first issue and it's like, oh, cool. The other thing I like about it is it's drawn in a more, it's not drawn in that Mark Silvestri scratchy style. It's in a more modern art style that I appreciate because there's more storytelling than pinup to it. So those are the comics that I'm geeking on. We're in football playoff season. Joe, here's how I know I am not a normal football fan. You know what I enjoyed most about the playoff season?
Cheerleader shots.
Nope, because there aren't very many. That baffles me. You've got these beautiful girls by the side, and why aren't you showing them when you come in and out of commercial?
And you can barely see them when you're in the stands anyways, but
yeah.
Oh well.
One of the games was a blowout. One team was, I'm not going to spoil anything, but one of the teams was ahead by 21 points, 21-0 going into the half. And for me, knowing, I watch wrestling, so I understand what the announcer's job is. The announcer's job is to tell the story and keep you engaged. I couldn't stop laughing as when we got into the second half, how the announcers were trying desperately to keep you interested in this blowout. They were doing everything they could so that you wouldn't turn the channel, even though there was no way the other team would win. I was just fascinated by all the little tricks they were doing to keep me watching when it's like, there is literally no chance the other team can win. Until there was they were down by, they were down by 21 points with 5 minutes left in the game, and even the announcers gave up.
Well, I got a corn on my foot that's been bugging me. I couldn't get rid of it at the hotel room.
And last thing I'm geeking on, this was the big weekend for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So we had Wrestle Kingdom 13, which was 5 hours. It's their version of WrestleMania. It was 5 hours long. And then the next day was New Year's Dash, which is kind of their reset button where they set up all the feuds for the next year. And that was about 4.5 hours long. I had 10 hours of Japanese wrestling to watch, Joe.
Woohoo!
So, believe it or not, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for over 2 hours.
You are hardcore fans. We love you. We love you. Each and every one of you. Except you in the back. You can bite me.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Cory, when I say 5-year mission, what comes to mind?
Star Trek.
Very good.
Series.
5-year mission is also the collaboration of 5 Star Trek fans who endeavor to write and record a song for each of the episodes of the original Star Trek series from the 60s one.
That means they're doing one for the space hippies.
Yes. And they have
Spock's brain.
They have interests like salt vampires, Venus drugs, little kids that yell bonk bonk, and Orion slave girls. And they've given us the okay to feature in the next 3 podcasts songs off their CDs. If you go to their Facebook page, 5-Year Mission, or their website, which is 5yearmission.net, you will see the band members. You'll see the let's see, I think they're up to season 4 in terms of their 5-year mission, and the music is all based like they said on the TV series. So rush over to Memory Alpha, read up about the series, and there's a couple things coming up with these guys if you happen to be down in the Indianapolis, India area. First thing on January 25th, they're going to be at the Melody Inn. 5-year mission, the Leisure Kings, Palace, and another band to be announced, and you're just going to have a jolly good time. For $5, you can get in and have an awesome time. And to more Star Trek, the Children's Museum of Indianapolis at 3000 North Meriden Street in Indianapolis is on February 2nd opening up their exhibit, Star Trek, Exploring New Worlds. And the second is their opening day celebration, which 5-year mission will be playing at as well. So check out the music, check out their websites. If you like them, tell them you heard it on this here podcast. The song we're featuring this week is The Enterprise Incident. And here it is.
I'm incapable of lying, but it is not a lie to keep the truth to oneself. Initiate recording, run the write a statement. I freely admit my guilt. It would be illogical to presume all conditions stable. Please go and transform your